people are coming very soon, but well, we better not wait any longer. Let me just inform everyone that today's seminar is going to be recorded, like all our classes. Recording has already started. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest for today, our esteemed guest, who is Dr. Daniel Hartman. From, well, I'm not going to say from, because, you know, like this is going to be evident in a minute. Daniel holds a diploma in geology, an MSc in geology from Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz, and a PhD in geology from Aarhus University in Denmark. For the last 13 years, he has been a senior lecturer of safety management and disaster management courses at the Safety Management and Engineering Unit at the Ben Gurion University in Beersheba. In his capacity, he guided already about 20 safety engineering students in their MSc thesis. Daniel has been an active member of the Risk Management Working Group and the Technion Gordon Center for Systems Engineering, conducting stamp-related research and workshops. Daniel joined the newly established Systems Engineering Research Institute, SERI, at the Tel Aviv University with his multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary research, mainly focusing on studying hazard analysis and accidents and disaster analysis in the context of the entire socio-technical systems. He is also a water safety and coastal environmental management research activist and consultant to various law firms and organizations. Apart from STAMP, I think Daniel will tell you that he's also doing research on people, on disasters in seas, people that are drowning, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me, Daniel. Let me just spare a couple of words about today's seminar. Traditionally, well, what we're going to do is an introduction on STAMP, the System Theoretical Accident Model and Processes. And Dr. Daniel Hartman is going to talk about traditional safety and security paradigms and approaches that have evolved throughout human history, and especially since the end of the 19th century, have been challenged in recent decades by developing new compounds and materials and new software-based technologies, and by the growing complexity of the systems we develop and use. The role of people operating these systems is also changing because they are being asked to manage and oversee increasingly complex automation that may not be fully understood, neither by the designers nor by the operators. Using innovative complex systems can lead to unexpected outcomes and lead to far more complex human errors than those familiar with manual tasks and simple predefined procedures. Therefore, we must effectively separate flaws stemming from unsafe engineering requirements and design, or from the weaknesses in social and organizational systems that strongly influence the design and implementation of those systems. From the so-called human factors related errors, legislation and regulation often fail to understand the new hazards and risks, and therefore do not provide a sufficient safety net for human society, and therefore even the actual managers of these systems do not manage the risks effectively. We are going to follow a systems approach to safety and security developed and practiced over the last 20 years by Nancy Levinson from MIT in the United States. She's applying systems thinking to develop new paradigms, a safety and security model, STAMP, and innovative practical methods like STPA and CAST. Those new tools and processes use systems thinking to provide comprehensive, more efficient, and more effective results. Without further ado, I leave the floor to Daniel. The format for today is going to be, already we have quite a few participants. The format is going to be that Daniel is going to deliver his webinar. He told me that he doesn't mind if you ask him questions during the webinar. but knowing myself and you, I prefer that we keep this to the end, because otherwise we will finish on Wednesday. Let's try, and I'm sure Daniel doesn't mind this, but later on I want to watch MasterChef in the television, so I have a deadline. And Daniel, the floor is all yours. Once you finish, I will have...
of our Wednesday evening is the eve of our national holiday. So.
Okay, so we can extend it, like to the next one, like to Thursday. So let's, yeah, if you want to stay, like and celebrate the National Day, the Zoom will be open and will be recorded. But I suggest that we enjoy Daniel Hartman's, Dr. Daniel Hartman's great presentation. And then when we finish, we're gonna have questions. The floor will open for questions. Without further ado, Daniel, shalom. Welcome to European University Cyprus. We are very excited to have you here. And some of the, well, I can say definitely for my students, for my MSc and my PhD students, that they are brilliant minds. And they're very excited to listen to you and to listen to your vast experience. And also, we had these conversations many times. When you speak about science, I'm not saying that you are old, but when you speak about science and your ideas, it is as if I hear, like someone who just graduated from their PhD, your zest and your strength when it comes to discussing your research ideas is amazing. I'm always, happy to hear this, and this is a very good opportunity to start in public our collaboration here. The floor is all yours. I'm switching off my camera because I'm too handsome and I think people will concentrate on me so that they listen to your presentation. Thank you very much, Daniel. Toda rabba, and we'll see you at the end.
Okay, thank you, George. And thank you for the invitation and opportunity. I mean, if we wouldn't be in the COVID-19 area, I would probably jump to Cyprus and give the talk directly to you. Okay, so as George said already, I'm going to give you a very how should I say, not short, but very brief introduction to STAMP. And I will use it also to present to you some of my ideas, because I look at STAMP. STAMP is a model, a new paradigm related to safety. And I'm using STAMP as a research tool and also to study case studies, to use it for case studies. So I do think I belong to those people who think that there is still a lot to do research within STAMP. Okay, so let's see. Here's the overview. I will first talk about motivation, my motivation, but also motivation to do system safety, yes? And especially system safety with modern paradigms and modern tools. And then I will go through the list. Okay, so first of all, let's think about the Thanksgiving turkey. Yes, it's very interesting animal. It grows, and we feed it, and it grows, and we feed it, and then one day we have it on our teller as a nice Thanksgiving turkey to eat it. And I think that we have to understand the safety is just, we should feel and think like this poor turkey. We have to think, thinking means to know a lot, to understand a lot, and then to act in our everyday life or in much larger topics that humanity thinks that they are important for us. Yes, we have to think, we have to manage all the risk and hazard in our life. And we pay very dear, very hard penalties for not being safe. Yes, one of these penalties, disaster, where 44 people were killed, died by fire, by forest fire in Israel, about 10 years ago, in the Carmel. It's not far away from you, if you think, yes. It's a very expensive lesson in risk management and in system safety. Yes, so, I mean, it's just this slide is a lecture for itself. It's a research for itself. So I'm just giving you some ideas about. And then we have this saying from Nassim Taleb. I don't know if you know him. He's a book writer, a bestseller book writer. And he says, you will never fully convince someone that he is wrong. Only reality can. So we need, humanity actually need accidents, yes, and disaster, because we learn from them. And I will talk a lot about accidents, disaster, and what they mean and so on, and how should we learn from them. But also, if we look at safety from an economic or cost point of view, we know, not today, but already 40 years ago almost, yes, that if we do risk assessment, risk analysis, well, we will perform safety measures from the beginning of a system. Here we have a system life cycle, yes, starting with concept, requirement, design, build, operate, and go on. So if we start with safety from the beginning, our ability to impact the cost of the system that we are developing and producing are very high. And along this life cycle, it goes less and less. We are not able to change things. But we have all along this life cycle, we can have potential or real accidents, loss event, whatever you name them, yes? We can have in all these phases accidents. Of course, most of you, when someone would ask you, can you define accident? Most of you would probably refer to accidents that occur during operation of something. But actually, accidents are all over. Yes, if a startup, if a company wants to develop a new vaccination for the coronavirus, yes, and maybe they invest few $100 million and they fail in the concept of this medication, then it's a loss event. Yes, they lost money. And if we are not putting safety into the system, the new system, and we have an accident somewhere along this life cycle, and then we want to change it, the cost of the design changes are very high as we go down the life cycle. So therefore, first of all, if you are arguing with managers, with decision makers who say, oh, safety is too expensive, then please tell them, if safety is too expensive, try an accident. Accident is always more expensive than putting it into the system. But because we want to put safety at the early stages of the system development, at a stage that we call, or systems engineering are calling, the solution-free stage, where we just have the concept, the requirement. Actually, we see or we understand the system in its functional behavior. We don't know yet how it really will be, yes? And we want to be able to perform our safety analysis, risk analysis there. And therefore, today we would look, especially in a very complex system that we have today, with software, with whatever, we would look for thinking and tools which can help us with a safety guided design, yes? And this is actually STAMP and its tools. Okay, so I mentioned already accidents and so on. Why study accidents? Yes, and what is a definition? Well, there are many definitions of accidents, but we can define them either as loss that is unacceptable to the stakeholders. It means anyone in the system is a stakeholder, and what is unacceptable for him, or another way is non-accomplishment of the system's mission. So why do we have a system? What is its mission? What do we want to do with it? Yes, so we have a system, and there are always system changes. There are the accident. Accidents have life cycle for themselves. They are coming again and again and again. Car crashes are coming all the time. Airplane crashes are coming all the time, not at the same place, not with the same airplanes, but this life cycle of accidents. And we should investigate them. No, we should analyze them, because investigation has always the connotation of law enforcement, of lawyers, of penalties. We want to analyze accident. We want to understand the causality, why they happen, and over the time, learning more and more, getting more data, information, and knowledge about this certain accident, let's say. We want to see a kind of a learning curve, a curve that goes and decays with the time. It shows that we are doing accidents for a certain type, but we are learning how to manage it, or the safety of the system that is causing these accidents. And actually, my mission, and I think your mission should be also, that socio-technical system to become learning organizations. And if you don't know what socio-technical systems are, I will explain it in a few minutes. But actually, each country is a socio-technical system, but I will go into it. So this was my very motivation, very brief motivation. And again, now I will talk a little bit about my view of safety science, especially things that from reading the literature, I understand that people are sometimes confused about things, yes, about important things in safety. So I will give you my ideas about it. First of all, hazard and risks, yes? How should we deal with them? So I would like to explain that actually there is a connection between what we know, yes, again, this data, information, knowledge, and risks. And actually life exists because life knows how to manage risk. Otherwise, there wouldn't be no life, not only human beings, but any life. So there is in us some understanding for what I call risks that are perceived directly, either by our genes or by learning from our family, our parents, and so on, yes? And they exist actually forever. And for human beings, for hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years, depending how we look at ourselves as humans. And it goes for a very long time. But then over the last few hundred years, yes, I wrote here 250 years, maybe 150 years, we started to develop science, methods to understand things in a more precise way. And with science, we actually started to understand a lot of risks and hazards and problems that our ancestors, our parents, couldn't understand. Yes, and once we understand this risk, we can also try to learn and understand how to manage them, because sometimes we understand the risk, but we don't know how to manage it. And then we have another two types of risks or hazards. One I call virtual risk. The meaning is that actually we don't have full knowledge, full information about it, or we are gathering knowledge about it. And the last group is the group of unknowns. Well, we don't know that they exist. And these virtual risks are non-manageable unless we, society, start to invest money in understand those risks and manage them. And the best evidence is that now we are in a huge problem of the COVID-19 problem. Yes, at the beginning, nobody knew about it. It was totally virtual. And then we started gathering information. And today we have even vaccination and so on. So we can, by studying, by science, we can move some risks from here to the manageable ones. But it's not only the COVID-19, yes, there is hundreds or thousands of so-called risks like pesticide, the climate change, so-called climate change, plastics, and so on and so forth. Yes, so sometimes there are problems that we don't know about them enough, or we don't know how to deal with them when we have to understand it. And another thing with those definitions are, well, what are accidents actually? Loss events and so on. And I would suggest a classification. First of all, there are those tangible accidents that we know about them. And why we know about them? Because some feedback loop is closed, we can see it. When two cars crash, yes, when we cut our finger with a knife, we know that something happened, the feedback loop is closed and we know it. But of course, there are a lot of other accidents or loss events that it takes time for them to fully develop to an accident. The best example, or one of the most famous examples, is the asbestos sickness, yes? People who are exposed to asbestos fibers, it takes sometimes up to 30 years so that they develop this fatal illness and eventually die at the end, yes? So for 30 years, they were once exposed to the fibers, then it took 30 years for their body to develop this asbestosis and eventually at the end die. So the feedback loop is very slow, yes, but in the asbestosis, at the end, it ends, the person dies, but maybe, not maybe, for sure, we have today in our lives, maybe we have 100 or 1,000 such of hidden accidents that we don't know about them because we are still in the exposure. They are going around and we don't know about them. Or there are some that we even don't know about them, that they are accidents. And I will explain it. Yes, so here we have different socio-technical systems with hidden, or we can call them also latent accidents. Those of you who know the Swiss cheese and the latent things in it. And I have in Israel a friend, he's a professor of justice, and he actually started talking about hidden accidents. And we know about it from the Innocent Project in the United States, where people were sentenced to death or to for a very long period of in jail. And after many years with DNA analysis, they found that these people are innocent. So they were either executed dead or they spent many years in jail for nothing. And for us, this is a kind of accident, a hidden accident. But for most crimes, there is no DNA evidence. So maybe in the jails, more people who are innocent are just hidden accidents, and the system doesn't know about it, and therefore there is no learning curve because they cannot become better. And of course, we have this hidden accident in the health system, in the drug treatment, in nourishment system. We had 30 years, 20 years ago, we had a big disaster where infants, very small children died because of critical food, baby food that was not good enough for them, and they became sick and some of them died. And of course, environmental pollution, yes. One of my students analyzed the Flint disaster in the United States, and for many years, nobody knew that the water is polluted. Of course, decision-making. Some people make bad decisions, and then many years afterwards, something would come out. But the problem was in the decision-making, which was an accident. Of course, in the high-tech industry, in the chips and so on, there can be hidden accidents. In aviation, where we heard about the various Boeing accidents, the problems were there. I call them accidents. And of course, in the software industry, we are aware all the time about the viruses, the worms, the Trojan horses, and so on. Okay, so this words accident and disaster, how do they relate? Are they just, one is smaller, the other one is bigger? And how they are related to loss events? I believe they are all the same, because we can treat them. We can either analyze them, or we can make better risk management, risk analysis for them. So they are the same, but still there are differences. So I would suggest this four-dimensional space where we look at the time, the space itself, geographical space, the complexity and the severity, and we can actually separate them regarding these parameters. And the accident, either simple or complex accident, will be phenomena, loss events that actually have a duration of few milliseconds up to maybe 1-2 hours and very confined space. And disaster would always be, or usually will be, larger spaces, larger time, and so on, will be with higher severity. And with this idea, we can go to various accidents and disasters. And again, these two slides are a lecture for itself. So I'm just showing you my ideas. There are different accidents and so on. And actually, I can separate them through this four-dimensional space, yes? And of course, understand what are the differences between them and what are the similarities. And the similarities are, again, that I can treat them all, I can analyze the accident, if they are real, with STAMP model and its tools, yes? One thing that also is coming here, but I will only talk very shortly about it later, is that disaster demand response, very complex response. And within the response, I can have, again, accidents, but I will talk about it later. So, I mean, we are modern people. I'm a little bit older. Most of you are probably much younger. All of us use today these smartphones. And it's obvious, we know that over the last 100 years, the paradigms related to using a telephone or whatever we call it change, our scientific knowledge change, the tools, the method, and also the phones. So if such a very simple instrument change, why not other tools, other ideas related to safety, of course? Yes, but first of all, let's look at, again, at this idea of socio-technical system. I mean, human beings, from the minute we started doing stone tools and so on, we were actually using humans or social system and mechanical systems. And an example for human mechanical system or socio-technical mechanical system is this airplane, yes? And the duration of humans using mechanical system, again, goes for millions of years since we are something like Homo sapiens sapiens, us, yes? And then just at the end of the 19th century, people started using electricity. And combined electricity and mechanical system, and we get electromechanical systems. Yes, this is just an example of an airplane. And the duration of us using or being inside an electromechanical system is just about 120 years. And then about 60 years ago, we started using systems that are software, hardware combination, yes, and of course, socio-technical system. And these are just examples. So we are going changes, but most of our way of thinking and understanding things is dictated by mechanical thinking. Now, Nancy Leveson told us, look at those systems as control, as safety control systems, yes? So if we are in a mechanical system, yes, the operator can direct, perceive, see and perceive the process that he is controlling. Yes, he can do it by using other controllers, and the display is our sensors and so on. So it's a very simple feedback model, yes? And this simple, very simple feedback model actually dictated, or not dictated, but was the cause that at the beginning of the 20th century, the first people who were thinking about safety science or modern safety, they had the idea of the domino, the domino effect, because the domino effect just represents a very simple mechanical system. And then, as I said before, electromechanical system entered into our lives. And it took a lot of time, but sometimes in the 80s, people started to use more complex models for safety. One of them is the Swiss cheese, but we can see also that in an electromechanical system, the control is a little bit more complex, yes? We have a synthesized perception. We need sensors and displays to help us to understand the process. And then we go into the software hardware world, the world that we live today, yes? And we have a computer in the middle, and the computer is actually the unit that controls the process, and it just displays to us what is going on in the process. Yes, but this model, this control model, exists only for maximum 60 years. So why do we care about it? Why do I care about it? Because we have to understand that our brains, the way that we think about the world, and I'm teaching now for the, let's say, 8-10 years students about these complex models. And I have always problem because most of the engineering students, I'm teaching engineering students, have linear thinking. Yes, they have never learned system thinking, complex thinking, and so on. Yes. And then I asked myself, okay, let's take the three systems. It's obvious that the computerized systems are more efficient regarding many things. Yes, humanity could not achieve what we achieved today in the last years, let's say compared 100 years ago, because computers make life more efficient, but they make life more risky. There are much more chances to make an error, to get an accident. Yes, so if, let's say, in a mechanical system, it's purely theoretical, purely theoretical. I'm just theorizing. So in a mechanical system, I have 9 points that can fail. In an electromechanical system, I have already 12. And in a computerized system, I have 15. And of course, this is pure theory. So we have to understand that modern systems are much more efficient regarding many parameters of the system, but they are more prone to accidents and to loss events than the older systems. Okay, and I'm not the first one who is talking about linear thinking, about system thinking, and so on. I just found it and I find it interesting. Yes, Peter Senge, system dynamics. Well, I'm not going into it. So this is mechanical control systems, event-oriented thinking. A leads to C, leads to D, or A and B leads to C, leads to D. While system thinking, we have to think all the time in control loops, in things that affect other things, and they all are feedbacks and so on and so on. And this is the reality, not this one. So if we are teaching our safety or risk management students, we should teach them also system thinking, yes, and tell them that one of the weakest biases is actually this linear thinking. Okay, so this is taken from Nancy Leveson. Why we need a new approach to safety. Traditional safety engineering approaches developed for relatively simple mechanical or electrical mechanical system. The nature of accidents today in complex software-intensive systems is changing. The role of humans in modern systems is changing. We have to understand this. And of course, traditionally, we view safety as a failure problem. Yes, things fail because in a mechanical system, once something fails, then we have an accident. And chain of directly related failure events lead to a loss, domino effect. And therefore, they form the basis, the paradigms for the most safety engineering and reliability engineering analysis. So safety and reliability in this world are connected. For example, yes, FTA, PRA, FEMICA, Eventry, HAZOP, and so on. And I think you are familiar with these tools or models. And in engineering design, for example, in nuclear industry, the defense in depth, or in the process industry, something called LOPA. And the design is to establish barriers between events or prevent individual components failures. Yes, this is the way of thinking. It's the linear way. But therefore, these systems tend to make redundancy, over-design, safety margins, interlocks, fail-safe design, and so on. But it's a problem in our complex modern world. Yes, this chain of event model is too simple for us. Yes, our systems are too complex. Yes, and engineering has changed. Humanity has changed. Yeah, and we are not going back, probably, or hopefully, to the mechanical world. So accident prevention, accident prevention or accident analysis technique based on linear thinking, they are good, but they have limited usefulness. We don't say throw them away, but we would like to say they are limited in what they can deliver. Yes, and we know today that accident can happen with no component failure, and I will talk about it in a few minutes. And sometimes component may fail, but nothing happened. And we need something different. But one of the first things that we have to separate is between safety and reliability. Again, this is, I think, the issue of separating safety from reliability is either for MSc thesis or even for a PhD thesis. So I'm not going into it, but we should separate them. And again, if we take this historical view, we can see that the differences, the development of the different systems, the different tools in safety, most of them are linear models, and only here in the last 20 years, we have some systemic models, yes? And again, we can connect everything to this socio-technical system, and we see that only, again, in the last 20 years, we have two and a half system models The first one was by Rasmussen, then Holnagen, and then Leveson. I am for Leveson. But again, even if we change the way we think about safety, it will not help us, because safety, those who are responsible for safety are the managers and the regulators. And actually, we need something called safety culture. And we know today that there is a safety culture ladder. There are 5, we can group them in 5 groups. The first one is pathological, they don't care about safety. Second one is reactive, they react to problems. And then we have some calculative, but actually we would like to be in the proactive or in generative. But to move there, we have to change the paradigms that we look at safety, that we use safety and so on. Yes, so without paradigm change and without change from linear thinking to complex thinking, there is no chance to move there. Now, if we gather everything together, yes, this is a way to convince you that if we want to do safety, again, this is my personal opinion. Fortunately, there are many other people who think like me. We should go to systemic models. As I said, there is STAMP and FRAM. There is a lot of activity in the FRAM community. I'm using STAMP, and therefore now I'm going to talk about STAMP. Yes? Now, just to convince you that I'm not a kind of a crazy one, yes, a few next slides are from the last workshop that Nancy Leveson had in MIT. It was a Zoom workshop, yes. So there were people from all kinds of industry and academia, and from many countries. And I was very happy to see that also from Cyprus, people were there, and from Israel, I was there also. And I also was very happy to find that activities in Cyprus regarding STAMP, STPA, and CAST are used. Please tell me who is the guy that Cyprus is here due to him, yes? Please contact me. And it's good to see that all over the world, people are using STAMP, and now we go finally to STAMP. Or first, let's say, what is safety? Yes, so many people define safety as absence of losses. So a safe system, it's one of the definitions that we actually define something, but by not being there. So if we have no losses, we have a safe system. Yes, Nancy Leveson in STAMP defines it a little bit different. She says freedom from unacceptable loss events. Okay? Because sometimes we can accept some level of losses. And as I said before, accident, mishap, losses, disaster, many wordings actually say the same. And again, in STAMP, any undesired and unplanned event that result in a loss. And it can include anything that you like. Loss of human life, injury, but also negative business impact, product launch delay, legal entanglement, and whatever you like to put into it. If it's a loss event, you remember, if the stakeholders think that it's a loss event, then it's a loss event. But STAMP also can treat, and it includes in it also inadvertent and intentional losses, meaning that security and safety can be treated by the same model and by the same tools. And this is a big advantage also. Yes, and these are just a list of all kinds of losses that STAMP can easily deal with, yes, including the COVID-19. And I've done some work, but there are not many people who are interested in system thinking. But STAMP and its tools, yes, if we take the traditional analysis tools, as we said before, FEMICA and FTA and so on, the traditional analysis can deliver this much result. It's, of course, it's relative. STAMP-based hazard accident analysis can deliver much more results. But STAMP also can deliver scenarios. So if you are doing STPA, which is hazard analysis, or in your language, risk analysis, yes, it can deliver many scenarios how a certain theoretical failure can happen. Now, sorry, how do I know this, for example? I just can show you from three of my students, just an example. The first one studied a radiation accident in Israel. One technician was died due to radiation. It's, again, this is a lecture for itself. And here I will explain it. A socio-technical system has different levels. Yes, the official investigation, because in Israel, when it's a radiation accident, it must be investigated. So they got 7 major results. My student got 21 results, and many of them in the upper level of the socio-technical system, meaning related to legislation, regulation, standards, and so on. Yes, because we look over there, we look there, and there are a lot of problems in this higher level of our socio-technical system. Another student studied a refinery accident in the United States. This accident was studied by the Chemical Safety Board. We use their data. They have good teams. They have done very good work. So they got 32 results, major results, and recommendation. We got only 50, but still one student compared to Chemical Safety Board. And as you can see, we find a lot of problems in the higher level of the socio-technical system. And again, another accident we had a few years ago in Israel, a crash between 2 trains. One of the trains had hazardous material, bromine, and we just got almost 6 times more results. And as you can see, a lot of the problems are in the legislation and regulation level and not in the technical level. Yes, and they cause most of the problems. So what is STAMP? STAMP is a change in paradigm. STAMP just says, instead of thinking about preventing failures, we have to think about enforcing safety constraint on system behavior. So it's a control model. We want to control the system. Yes, and losses are the result of complex dynamic processes, not simply, as I said before, chain of failures and so on. So in this way, most major accidents arise from very bad decision-making, mostly in the upper level of the socio-technical system, design flows, slow change, migration of a system over the time, and so on and so forth. And this model is based on system theory about hierarchical functional safety control structure. I will explain it in a few minutes. Process model that we want to control, and those safety constraints. Yes, and again, it's a kind of a summary. Accidents are more than a chain of events. They involve complex dynamic processes. We treat accident as a control problem, not as a failure problem. Prevent accident by enforcing constraint on component behavior and interactions. It's very important, the interactions, and I will give you a very interesting example. And this way we can capture much more failures compared to the other methods and models. Yes, so STAMP delivers some changes. It focuses on the entire complex social technical system. It enables us to think about the system as a hierarchical functional safety control structure, and we use verbal logical safety constraints. STAMP has no quantities in it, no probabilities. We don't deal with probabilities. It's not it's a verbal logical model. We are doing safety with words. And by the way, Nancy Leveson has a PhD in mathematics and computer sciences, and she was one of the first in the world to write books about safety of software. So she's not shy from mathematics, but we think that we don't know or we don't have actually any way to calculate probabilities for failure in a software and so on. Safety functions are transferred top-down from the legislation down to the system, yes, from the highest level to the lowest level. And then we have, as I said before, we have the model, stamp model. And if someone asks you what is stamp model, accidents are caused by inadequate control. This is enough to explain it. It's more complex than that, of course. And on the model, we have a tool, STPA, System Theoretic Process Analysis. And these tools enable us to look how and ask how do we find inadequate control in a system. Of course, it's a method. I'm teaching it for 1 semester. It's not so simple, yes? But this is the idea. How do we find inadequate control in a system? And then we have CAST, which looks for causality in a loss event or an accident. And again, we have the stamp model and CAST analysis. How do we find inadequate control that caused the accident? So in CAST, we're analyzing a real accident. In STPA, we are analyzing theoretical accidents. And therefore, there are many scenarios and many context possibilities that can lead to the same accident. And here you have everything together. So STAMP is based on these domains and way of thinking. And you have the reactive tool, CAST, and you have the proactive tool, STPA. And as I said before, we took from system engineering the idea of life cycle, not only from system engineering, where we have the solution-free stages, and we have the solution-oriented stages, we have the operation, we have some crisis management, we have the end of the system, and we can actually perform STPA all over in each of the steps whenever we want. And again, we took, or STAMP took from control theory, the idea of a control loop in a closed control loop, yes, where we have a controller via control actions. We have a controlled process, we call it hazardous process, and the control process sends via sense of feedback, and this way we can manage it, yes? Sorry. And of course, the controller has to know about the control process. He needs to have a model of the process, yes? And of course, he also has to know what is the goal of the system. And of course, he needs to know the control actions, and he needs to know about the feedback, yes? But again, this is just one generic loop within a much, much larger real system, yes? And of course, the loop, the control loop, it's not just one time control action and feedback, but it goes forever as long as this control loop exists, safety control loop, yes? But again, I told you that I'm also putting some of my ideas. Actually, we have to put attention to the time, because there are, I will show you in a few minutes that there is this hierarchy, yes? And there are differences in the time of the different control loops, and sometimes we can have also differences between the control actions and the feedback. And of course, these time differences can cause problems also. Yes, but the control loops go forever. Okay, and the controller, he has to deliver all kinds of things, yes? He needs to have goals, policies, constraints, commands, resources. Without resources, there is no control action, and the responsibility for all this. And we expect from a control process, from hazardous process, to send to the controller information about what is going on there, yes? Results, experience, reports, depending on, again, on the level in the system. And of course, also, if there are accidents, also about information about loss events. And as I said before, there can be often different times in this way and in this way, and we have to remember it and to study it. And also Nancy Leveson has found already many years ago that within this control loop, we can have a lot of potential flows causing, just in one single control loop, causing a lot of loss event or potential for accidents and so on, yes? And here just an example, let's take an electric kettle. We have a person, we have a controller, automatic boiler. The hazardous process is reaching requested temperature. We push the button and our control loop goes on. And if we don't reach the temperature, we don't get coffee or tea. So it's a hazardous, it's a loss event and so on. Yes, but you can see, you can feel what the meaning is of a control loop. And as I said before, the controller needs to have a process model. He needs to know about the control process. He also needs to have a control algorithm, how to do it. And it will do it via control actions, getting feedback, and so on. I'm starting to go a little bit faster because I feel that the time is running. Yes, so I will go a little bit faster, I'm sorry. And of course, now we stuck together a lot of control loops. Yes, first I make it very simple. So we have one level is the legislation and regulation, and they send control actions to the management of an enterprise, of a company, of a university, it doesn't matter, and expect to get a feedback. And the management says, again, as a control loop to the technical part, and of course, they should now run all the time. Yes, this is a very simplified idea of what is actually a socio-technical system. And this idea is after Rasmussen already 20-something years back. Yes, and of course, usually the loss events, the real or this that we experience as loss events, they are always down. Yes, and therefore people who think in a linear way, they would say, this is an Israeli saying, that the God should be always, the God is responsible if something happened and so on. Yes, not here, but down below. We blame those people. Yes, this is the human behavior and so on. Of course, it's not good. But now if we look at the socio-technical system, we can see that it has more layers. This is the Israeli socio-technical system. I don't know exactly how it is in Cyprus. So we have our parliament with primary legislation. Then we have the ministries who should do secondary legislation. Then all kinds of authorities and regulatory bodies who are doing regulation. And then we have the company and within the company and so on. And so this is the way we look at the socio-technical system, composed of all these loops, feedback loops, and so on. But everything, the demand to deliver safety should go from above to the lowest level. And of course, get feedback to know, are my control actions, were they good? Was my legislation good? Was my regulation good? And so on. Yes, and of course, accident happens and then everybody say, oh, you are responsible, and the accident today in modern times and so on. Now, Nancy Leveson took this idea and said, hey, wait a minute. We don't have one structure, socio-technical system. We have actually two structures. We have one structure that is responsible for developing a system, let's say an airplane. So this is the legislation in the United States to develop a new airplane, Boeing, yes? And after everything, or new medication, new vaccination, COVID vaccination, and so on. And after the development system has approved everything and said it's safe, then it will move to the operation system. And usually, with the Boeing accidents over the last few years, the accident is during the operation. But if we perform a good accident analysis, we find that most of the problems were in the design and in the development, in the development stages and not in the operation. Yes, so again, now a brief historical view. So Rasmussen gave us this idea of socio-technical system. Nancy Leveson said we have system development, system operation. And your neighbor, Daniel Hartmann, says, wait a minute, we have also, or we need also a socio-technical system for response, for crisis, for disasters, because we can have problems in disasters. And actually, if we look at two big disasters we had, let's say recently, Chernobyl and the 9/11, many people in Chernobyl, I think most of the people who died during the response and not in the operation. And the response, I don't know how it is in Cyprus, but I think it's like in Israel. When an ambulance is rushing to an accident, it has extra legislation. It can go through red lights. It can drive just without paying attention to anything, yes? Because it's a different set of regulation. And again, in 9/11, of course, most people died because of the crash of the airplanes, but many firefighters and policemen also died or suffered afterwards very heavily during the response. So we need also for response system to do the safety management. And okay, we have the system. It can have different physical processes, and we actually say that safety is emergent property only if the entire system has its risk management, then it can deliver safety. I think that I will jump, sorry for it, I will jump because I just want to give you two examples. This is from Nancy Leveson. It's about the 2002 Überlingen mid-air collision. Two airplanes crashed, one Russian, one German. The German one was cargo, the Russian one was passengers, and 69 people died in this crash. So now we put everything in this visual socio-technical system, yes? So we have the two aircraft with the pilots. The pilots, of course, they are controlling the aircraft. The pilots also have instrumentation telling them about other airplanes in the sky, but also the air traffic controller sitting in Zurich, and Überlingen is in Germany, in Germany, yes? He also telling them about other airplanes coming. And the two airplanes were approaching and so on. And the air traffic told them, hey, guys, pilots, look, you are approaching another airplane, and therefore you should do this to avoid each other. You have to move this and this way. But there was a little problem because this pilot, he obeyed to the air traffic controller and did what he told him to do. But this pilot obeyed to the regulation in his country, in the Soviet or in Russia, and his regulation told him to obey to the TICAS, yes? And unfortunately, what happened is that they collided. So analyzing this, and 69 people were killed. So the accident happened here, two aircraft colliding, but nothing failed. There is no failure, nothing failed. This pilot obeyed to the regulation of his airline, and his airline obeyed to the regulation of the country. And again, this pilot obeyed, and everybody obeyed to what he should have done. The problem was here. ICAO, the International Commission Aviation Organization, this is a commission above FAA and the Russian commission, yes? And they didn't coordinate the two, FAA and the other organization, what to do if two aircraft are approaching one another. So the disaster happened because of lack of coordination. That's all. And with the old tools, we are not able to analyze it, to understand it, and of course to change the system. Again, I will go very quickly. I don't, well, another 3 minutes and I'm finishing. Let's, because it's just to give you a feeling, what does it mean, STPA and so on. Let's say we look at the direct collision between two cars. So we can define at the beginning the loss event, yes, harm to people, death or injury, because it's a generic accident. We don't know actually what happened there. And then the next step would be to define what we call hazards, because in STAMP we do hazard analysis, not risk analysis. Yes, and in this case, we define the hazard. The first hazard is not keeping a minimum distance from another car. So as long as these two cars will keep minimum separation distance, they will never collide. Yes, and then there are other hazards which I don't want to, we don't have time for it. So this is the major hazard to avoid such collision. Why do we need this hazard? We don't care about the hazard. We care about the safety constraint. You remember, we have a control structure. We want to enforce safety on the system. So once we know what is the hazard in this case, we turn verbally, in a logical way, we turn this saying into safety constraint. Yes, it's almost the same. A minimum safety distance between cars in motion must be kept. We don't say at this stage how to do it, but this is the main idea that should go from the legislator down to the system, down to each of us who is driving a car. Yes, as long as you will keep this, you will not be involved in such a crash. But there are different types of crashes. So how do you use the sentence that the safety constraint used before? I cannot use it. No, we just change it. Keeping minimum distance between cars in motion from any other factors on the way must be assimilated in the driving operation. So again, we just change a little bit the words and we have this safety constraint. And this way we can prevent, or theoretically prevent, many ways to collide. Yes, so this is the way we start an STPA. Of course, this is a very high level observation of the system. We start from a very high level, and of course, during the STPA analysis, we go down, 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 deeper, 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 and we make a zoom in and we go to much more detailed control loops. But once we understand the idea that keeping a distance can prevent a collision, then I can use the same generic thinking. And of course, there's no difference between two cars crashing or two airplanes crashing, or airplane crashing the ground, or two trains crashing, or two ships crashing. Yes, because from a safety functional point of view, it's very similar. Of course, then we have to go into details later in the analysis. Yes, and of course, also these accidents are all related to this hazard, not keeping safe distance. And again, we go through the control loops. George, I don't know how much time I have, so maybe I will just go. There are different. I don't go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just last three slides. This is a control structure of the train accidents in Israel, And because most of the rolling stock, we call it, most of the systems that belong to trains and so on are imported to Israel. We don't produce them in Israel. Therefore, in analysis, he had to go to the European Parliament and to the way how they are produced in Europe. And then in the Israeli system, this is just for developing the railway network and the rolling stock. And this is this is just for the operation. It looks different, yes? And this is also a very high level of observation. And then we have a third system for response, because in this crash, we had the bromine involved. Bromine is very high toxic liquid or substance element, yes, and therefore the control structure is totally different. The police is involved and the military and hospitals and so on, yes, and this is another. Well, let's stop here. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much. The floor is open for any questions, please.
George, if there is anyone who wants to ask something, can I ask something, Dr. Hartman?
Yes, yes, of course.
Yes.
Dr. Christos Argyropoulos from European University Cyprus. The floor is all yours.
Dr. Hartman, very nice talk, and I'm really excited from your experience using STAMP at these sectors. To be honest here, myself and George, we are trying to implement some STAMP tools in oil and gas industry, and we have got a very brilliant MSc student here. We are supervising both of us and try to implement STECA. I don't know if you have heard about this.
Yeah.
STECA is a tool.
Yanis Dokas is a very good friend of mine. So.
Oh, very nice. So yes,
he has also a PhD student dealing with STECA and forest fire.
Mm-hmm. So here, me and George and Elizabeth Kaya were trying to implement STECA. We had a collaboration with Yanis Dokas, and also we discussed about that, of course. And we tried to implement STECA in tank farm. So I would like to ask you about your opinion about STECA tool, because STECA was primarily used in aviation technology in a way, initially by one PhD student who developed by Levinson group at MIT. If I'm not incorrect, I think this guy was Fleming, Dr. Fleming. So I would like to ask you if you can, your experience, how we can implement also other tools of STAMP in oil and gas industry. This is something really interesting here in Cyprus, and I think so also in Israel. And here, me and George were trying to implement it and try to develop more, to be honest.
First of all, I would say one thing that I don't see actually. I think STPA is good enough. STECA is just a kind of a variant of STPA. So I don't see a difference between STECA and STPA. This is my opinion, yes? It's the same. It's a little bit, it's, I don't know, it's like I would go once, I used to have glasses. So once I go with glasses, I go, I don't see a big difference, but
yes, of course, there are great similarities. I agree with you.
Again, for me, and I think also for Nancy Leveson, we say you could use STPA as well, but it doesn't matter because it's just, I think that, sorry. Sorry.
No problem. No worries.
I think that it doesn't matter if it's aviation, if it's water pollution, if it's marine, a crash, whatever, a process industry, because you start from a functional thinking. and you go into the real details only at the end. And of course, in the team or in the group, there should be always a subject matter specialist. So if you are dealing with oil and so on, someone has to understand these specialities.
Technicalities, yes.
For example, I just can give you now. We are in the fourth week of not fourth week, the second month of the semester, and I'm teaching a CAS course now. Yes, in the previous semester I taught a STPA course, and I have 10 different groups. I have 20 students. Each 2 students get one accident or disaster, and they have to analyze it. And we have all these topics that are possible. I don't care if it's a airplane crash, or a flood in the desert, or water pollution, or
yes, I agree. The implementation you can do, but in our case, another goal of the MSc thesis of the student was and is, to be honest, to see differences compared to other safety methods. For instance, in oil and gas, we have a lot of also very nice and well-designed methods. For instance, HAZOP, fault tree analysis, and we want to compare the implementation of STAMP in specific components of the systems, of course, and to see if we can identify gaps, if we can see that, you know, one method is better compared to other, to see if we can identify, you know, new ways to improve existing methods, or even though to use tools of STAMP now. I mean, this is something that we have to convince the new safety engineers and process safety engineers in oil and gas. That's one of the ways that we're trying to do that.
You are in a place, I've been there, let's say, a few years ago. At the beginning, as you said, with my first student, I was trying to compare methods. And I was convinced. Now, there is a problem of marketing. Because what happened is that once you are fully convinced that STAMP, STPA, CAST are the better model and tools, now you have a problem because the world around us. Therefore, I mean, believe me, I was thinking so much about my lecture. If you are dealing with a company with a safety culture of a lower level, and they don't understand the need for paradigm shift, and you are coming with results with a very, very, very fantastic, with very good results. They are 30, 40, 50 years back with HAZOP and so on. So you and your students, you have a problem to sell yourself. But from a scientific point of view, and also from the results, you will get better. Look, you should, I don't know if you contacted ever John Thomas, because he has a lot of comparison between HAZOP. So these things, people have done them. So
yes, but
again,
the thing is that
today my position is, why should I mean, let's say, sorry that if I'm not patronizing anyone, really.
Yes, of course, we're discussing here.
I have to go, I live 100 kilometers from Tel Aviv, yes?
Yes.
So I could walk there. But of course, I prefer to take the train and to be there in 1 hour. Some other people, because of cultural thinking, they prefer to take the car, go into traffic jam, and they take them 1.5, 2 hours, and they are wrecked, they are nervous. So I really have the experience that STPA is better, but you don't have, your problem is not academic. Your problem is a perception problem of the other people. Because I'm sure that, and I know George, I think I will hope to know you. I think that you are very good academic, but you are dealing with a problem. How do I convince the others to use the newer methods? And therefore, maybe you have to spend, or this a student has to spend the time to make the comparisons. And once he has the good results, maybe it will be possible to go on and so on.
Yes, to agree with you, and just to add another comment to your very nice comments that you already said. The good thing about the student, and here me and George, is that we're trying to exchange ideas also with the safety engineers in the oil depot. So it is, you know, there is an exchanging, a sharing of knowledge and ideas at the same time that we're trying to implement STECA method in some components of them. So we're trying also, you know, and convince them that some tools are better than compared to use.
I will give you one, again, I will give you one advice. This is, again, my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start to present a very fragmented world, so they STAMP and STPA and STECA, and so people start to invent all kinds of new tools.
Mm-hmm.
Your customer, they know HAZOP, FTA, so they know very clear-cut tools, and then you start present them with every day, every second year, with some variants of the tools, and they got confused. I would say, please call it STPA, even if you are doing some changes and which are STECA. Why should you call it STECA? This is, again, my opinion, because it will confuse people. This is my way of thinking about it. And I think that Nancy Leveson, she also, I mean, she accepts people talking about STECA and so on, but she prefers only these buzzwords: STAMP, STPA, CAST.
I think Yanis has got a different opinion, but but I also respect your experience and your comments. Very, very useful for thoughts. And
I don't have good experience in selling STAMP. I have really big problem with it. Therefore, my desire and my wish, and I'm so happy that we start to work together, because my main problem is to things that I know or my students have done, to transfer it to the management, to the legislation and so on. And they don't want to hear about it. Yes, so if you find
it's difficult to persuade them.
Look, it changes especially changes, such heavy changes in paradigms. It takes time, probably.
Of course, always.
Yes.
Please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. George, if you don't have any other question.
Yes. Please. Do we have any other questions? Vangeli Demosthenis, do you have a question? I see you.
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
First of all, hello to everybody. And
nice to see you, and long time no see, my friend.
Thank you. It was an excellent presentation, Dr. Hartman. I am a big admirer of the process, although I don't call myself anywhere near of enough knowledge about it. I have a very, very brief idea. If I may ask one specific item that you referred to, you said at some stage that with the process of STPA, we analyze hazards and not risk. Can you please elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, of course. Let's go. I think this would be the best. So, first of all, if you go to the traditional definition of risk, in most books it will say probability risk equals probability multiplied by severity. Yes, this is one of the most famous definitions.
Yes.
So if I ask you, how would you define in this situation the risk? What would be the risk of possible collision between two cars or two airplanes?
Yes, it's always very difficult to define.
Sorry?
It's always very difficult to define risk.
No, then you can go to this definition, severity. Let's say X people will die, and the probability is different. I mean, 2 airplanes crashing, it's relative very low probability. 2 cars crashing, much higher probability, and so on. Yes, but again, you know this. You can put some meaning into this definition of 2 cars crashing regarding risk. What Nancy Leveson has suggested, she wants to prevent that this situation happens. So we look at this situation and we say, hazard is not keeping a minimum distance from one car to the another. Yes, if there is nothing happened yet. Yes, I know that this is a hazard, but I can control it. I can turn this hazard into a safety constraint. Yes, and I can now put it into the system. The meaning is that in each country, the parliament has to know about this hazard, and they have to write the legislation so that everybody who is driving a car will know about this hazard. Yes, and he will know that he has to keep a minimum safety distance. Let's say that one day there will be no human drivers, but there will be autonomous cars. And a computer program will drive the car. Will you teach the computer program the risk of crash? No, you will teach him the safety constraint. So safety constraint and hazards are much before the risk. And again, I'm not an engineer, but let's say I'm an engineer, you are engineers, so we think as engineers. We prefer to be this step ahead and prevent it first by words. And then, of course, if the parliament and the ministry are writing the rules, it will go down to the how do we call them in English? The schools where we learn to drive a car and to have a test for driving a car, and this safety constraint will be put into our mental model all the time. Or if we develop a autonomous vehicle, and it can be autonomous airplane, it doesn't matter. We have to put this mental model into the system. So I think it's more powerful to think this way than to think in risks. And again, in risk, you have to know the probability, but we don't have time now. But in many cases, you don't know the probability of a hazard. Yes, so if you don't know the probability, we go now to this autonomous car, and everything is controlled by a software. Software has no probability. What is the probability of the software to fail? The failures may be in the writing the requirement for the software. But once you have a software, the software will do what the code tells the system to do. So this is the way of, this is the paradigms change, the philosophy behind why we use hazards and not risk.
Okay. But I guess we still want to know the level of hazards, because we may need to take some decisions.
There is no level of hazard. We want to know the level of the risk. But again, and this is one, for the moment, one problem of STAM, that Nancy Leveson said, I don't prioritize. All hazards should be dealt with. There are today people in the world who say, we can prioritize the hazards, yes? Because afterwards, remember, what I presented today is a very high level view. I showed you, well, I don't have the time, but you can go, where is it? No, For example, this is from the university in Stuttgart, where they have done about automatic cruise control. So you start go deeper and deeper into the technical system, yes? And you have something that was presented at the beginning as one control loop. At the end, you can end with 10, 20, or 100 control loops, which are within this big control loop, yes? And some of them, you can put probabilities to it if they are technical. So this is one of the topics that I was discussing with George, that I don't think that STAMP and its tools are finished, yes? We can do a lot of research within it, how to put some probabilities where probabilities can be put into the system and so on, for example, or to prioritize different hazards.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, thank you, Vangeli. Thank you very much. And thank you, Daniel. Is there any other question?
Yes, I have a question.
I cannot see
And
you,
I
but
will have one question, please, George.
Musa, is this you?
Yeah, it's Musa. It's Musa.
Yeah, go ahead, Chief. Go ahead, man.
Yes, Professor Daniel, thank you for the very good exposition. But however, I still need some clarity regarding your explanation of hazard and risks. Let's look at the situation of the two vehicles. Let us assume that we have a multiple situation like that. In not one case, we have several cases of similar nature. And we are talking about hazards. How do we know which one is of more concern than the other one if you are not employing the risk factor? How do you know? We are not talking about one incident. We are talking about several incidents of similar nature.
Again, in this presentation, I was trying to bring a very high level, a brief introduction. Now you are going into, let's call it research questions, yes? So I would tell you, if, let's say, if this would be our project, we had to sit together, analyze it, to create all the control loops, to understand the situation, the scenarios leading to this situation, and start working on it. Yeah, so I cannot give you an instant answer to very complex. Your question is a very complex question. This lecture was not at this level. Yes, and maybe your question needs, as I said before, a research. Yes, someone has to sit down and to analyze it and to think about it and to develop it and so on. But I can assure you again that with STAMP and with STPA, because STPA is a proactive tool, you'll always get better results than with any other tool that you know. I can even put some money on it if you like. Yes, you will get always better results, richer results. Yes. And it's not the end of, so maybe in 10 years, someone will come with an even newer model, I don't know. But again, my experience and going to many STAMP meetings, conferences, and so on, always the results are richer if people start analyzing specific cases and so on. I hope that I could answer your question, yes? But George, I have one question. Can I ask one question?
By all means, go ahead.
So I can, maybe just another few words. I came to safety because I'm a coastal scientist. I'm a coastal geologist. I was dealing with sand, and then I moved to deal with drowning prevention. It was not my idea, but of colleagues from Australia, they started to use the knowledge that they know about coastal processes and relate them to drowning. I'm sure that you have droning in Cyprus. Do you know someone in Cyprus who would be interested in studying from a safety point of view, droning? And I'm talking mostly about what we call surf droning along the beaches, but also other types of droning. So if you know someone who has interest in it, please send him to me.
Okay, I know two people.
This is my passion, and I think that it should be brought forward. This
Okay, I know two people, Dr. Christos Argyropoulos, who spoke to you before, and myself, and we like swimming as well. So let's talk about this.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I love you people. I wish I could be there in a
Cypriot beach.
No, with you and giving a lecture, a normal lecture.
Yeah, you know, like in the future, when we also have, you know, like a good vaccination record like Israel, hopefully we are gonna do it.
But by the way, again, I don't know, because I know that, I remember that you are dealing also with MBA program and management students. Not
any longer. I used to in the past, but not any longer.
The topic of enterprise risk management. Enterprise risk management is excellent for STAMP, STP, and so on. Yes, because a lot of the problems down in the system is because of the upper layers. Yes, the management, the regulation, and so on. So
when I taught at the MBA, I was doing a module that was half statistics and the other half was ERM. I'm not saying that I'm the best in ERM, but definitely we can find someone to work with. Don't worry, this is like something that will happen anyway. So without, if there are not any other questions, I would like to release everyone. We had almost 2 hours of a fantastic lecture of Daniel. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. We really enjoyed this.
Yeah. Hope to see you also in person one day.
Of course we will. Of course we will. You know, like pandemic permitting.
I am already 3 months. For 3 months vaccinated, so
you are. So you know, like in 9 months you have to be vaccinated. I'm better because I haven't been vaccinated. So by the time I'm vaccinated, you will always be due for the next vaccination.
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye bye.
Thank you, George.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Thank Dr. George for the opportunity.
If you wish to contact me, anyone, I am just right. Yes, no problem.